Hey guys, it's Aman and Christina, and welcome back to the Our Rich Journey podcast. We are so excited to have you for our first ever podcast.
Yes, this is our first official podcast, right?
Podcast.
We had a little trailer at the beginning, but this is now our first official podcast where we're going to be answering questions from people. And we have gotten really amazing questions. I'm really excited.
Oh, we've gotten a ton of questions. Questions about how to make, save, and invest money for financial independence and retiring early. If this is the first time you guys have ever heard our voices, our story is that we retired at age 39, we moved to Portugal, and we are living our best life in financial independence. You see, Christina and I, we saved more, we made more, and we invested more money to achieve this goal. And so with this podcast, it is our mission to share what we've learned on our journey to help others expedite theirs.
Yeah, and we don't always know what is the best thing to share, right? We're like, will people be interested in this or that? So this podcast is great because people send us their questions. They basically tell us what they want to know. So I love the format of this, and I want to get started right away. We actually are going to start our first question. It comes from Michelle, and it's a question about whether she should pay off her student loans or whether she should invest. So let's listen to the question.
Hey, Amana Christina. This is Michelle calling from Colorado, USA. First and foremost, thank you all for doing this podcast Q&A segment, and I'll get right into my question, which is, should I pay off my student loans in the next 2.5 years, which I anticipate being able to do, or should I spread those payments out over, let's say, 5 years and use any of that additional payment to go to my 401k? So long story short, I changed careers and went back to school. So I'm a bit older than average, and I feel like I've kind of fallen behind on the investment game. So now that I've kind of my graduate program and now I'm in the tech industry making a considerable amount of money, more than what I was making in my previous area, I'm playing catch up. And so I really want to get these student loans off my books, but at the same time, with wanting to retire in the next, let's say 10, 15 years or so, it's a lot of substantial investment that I need to make, but I really want to get rid of these student loans. So with that being said, should I, note that I am matched to the employer contribution at my new company. So I have maxed that out. I've also maxed out in HSA. I'm sorry, I did not max out the 401k. I've matched the employer contribution, maxed out the HSA. So with that being said, should I get that investment income or pay off these loans first? Curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
So the question is really, should she max out her 401k or should she put more towards her student loan?
You know, it's interesting to me that she's only talking about the 401k and the HSA, because there are actually a lot more accounts that she could potentially invest in. So she didn't mention this in her question, but I'm interested to know if she's eligible for a Roth IRA, if there are other accounts that she could also potentially invest in, because I know for at least us, whenever we're making a decision on where to invest our money, there's a order of investing, right? We have to prioritize the limited amount of money that we have. And for us, we always looked to maximize the investments in tax advantage accounts, right? So which tax advantage accounts we put our investment money into first all depends on the benefits of those accounts. So that's one thing that's kind of missing from this question. Has she looked at other potential investment accounts that she could also put that money into? But if we're just focusing on the 401k, the HSA, and the decision to either invest in those or invest in or to pay off her student loans, let's just talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. I think it comes down to number crunching, really, because when you're thinking about where you're going to put a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of money, you're putting it one way versus in another account, for example, you have to think what is the greatest return that you're going to have in the long run, right? So if you put your money in your student loan and you don't invest, you are saving the interest rate on your student loan. Now, because we're talking about student loan, my guess is that the interest rate is fairly low, under 5% for the student loan, right? But on the other hand, if you take that same amount of money and you invest it, depending on what your investment is, do you think that it's going to return greater than 5%? And we're talking about over the long run, right? So historically, over the past 100 years, the total stock market has returned an average of 10% annually, right? So if you think about that type of level of return, a 10% annual return that you're missing because you may potentially be putting your money towards your student loan where you're only saving 5%, then based off of crunching all the numbers, it seems that investing in the 401k could potentially yield better results.
But there's also the aspect of whenever you invest in your 401k, it reduces your taxable income. You see, a lot of people also fail to take that into account. Mm-hmm. The savings that you're going to get because you're going to be paying less taxes because you're reducing your income by investing more in your 401k, you have to take that into account as well.
It also depends on what you're investing in, right? Because I'm talking about the total stock market, an average annual 10% return, right? If you invest in a low yielding bond, then you're not going to have obviously the same amount of return. But let's say it's between an investment account in your 401k that you can make like a total stock market index fund versus a student loan at maybe 5% or lower. The numbers, if you crunch the numbers, it will likely yield higher results if you're putting your money into an investment instead, if you're thinking about a 10% annual return. And that's over the long term, because she also said she's planning on retiring or reaching financial independence in 10 to 15 years. So numbers based, most likely it's better to invest the money. But I do want to mention something else, because she hit on this a couple times where she said, I really want to get rid of my debt, right? I just want to be done with it, right? So I think even with investing and with debt, there's an emotional component to it, right? Where
people just really, they really hate the idea of debt. We're debt free, and it is a huge relief. It is a huge burden to not have any debt in the background, mm-hmm. right? For us to have that clear conscience. So I do recognize that a lot of people, when they're thinking about making this decision, a big piece of it is the psychological effect that debt plays on you, right? But for us, Christina, we've always looked at it from the numbers perspective, right? And if you go back to running the numbers, you have to make a decision that if you're talking about investing, if you're talking about growing your wealth for financial independence, what is the most efficient way to get there? Yeah. I also want to say something about the amortization schedule that she has on these loans. Mm-hmm. Has she looked at the amortization schedule and what she would really be saving as far as interest if she paid these loans off earlier? Because the way most loans work is that you end up paying the majority of interest at the beginning of the loan, and towards the end of the loan, you're mostly paying principal. So if she's paying off these loans faster over these next 2 years, she could be really just putting most of the money towards principal. She may have already missed that savings that she would have gotten on the interest.
But I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate, because I think that the emotional component of having debt can be stronger. Like, we are very much number people, but I understand that not everyone has that same type of investment strategy. And so some people, when they have debt, it is really heavy on them and they just want to get rid of it. And they have almost like an emotional release by getting rid of it. And because it's such a short period of time, like 2.5 years left if she pays it off versus, paying it off for 20 years by putting extra payments, because it's such a shorter period of time, And because she keeps mentioning she really, really wants to pay it off, even though the numbers would more so veer towards investing, I think she has to take that into account. And if she feels more motivated to pay that off, and then once that's done, she feels even more motivated to just throw money into her investments after that, then maybe she might want to just get rid of the debt and pay that off. So it really just depends, Michelle, on your approach to investing and how you feel carrying debt.
Yeah, the motivation is I mean, that's really key on this journey, right? Whatever you can consistently do over a long period of time. And you know, one of my favorite things to hear about are folks that have paid off a tremendous amount of debt, right? And then they take all of that same energy and then they start investing. Like you hear those stories of people that paid off $200,000 worth of debt in 2 years, right? Can you imagine investing that kind of money over 2 years, but consistently doing that for a very long period of time? Those folks will be financially independent in no time. So being motivated with investing, with paying off debt, that is so crucial.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question, Michelle. I hope that you
Wait a minute. I have some homework for Michelle.
Oh, okay.
Because what I want Michelle to do is I want her to identify all of the tax advantage accounts that she is eligible to invest in. Because she may be missing an opportunity to invest in those accounts during a period of her career when the window is only available to invest in some of these accounts. So Michelle mentioned that she's in the tech industry. She has a certain salary. Well, I'll give you an example of a tax advantage investment account that people eventually they make too much money to be able to invest in. It's the Roth IRA. So if she is in a position right now where she can invest in the Roth IRA because her income falls below a certain threshold, a Roth IRA is an amazing account that a person should take advantage of while they have that opportunity to do that. Now there are other accounts we could spend a whole podcast going through them all, but if she is developing this overall FIRE plan, she has to develop a plan that includes investing in all of these accounts, but maybe also opening a regular brokerage account. Because for us, when we retired early, we had to have a diverse mix of accounts, right? Some that we could access early, and some that we have to delay, some that we have to maybe do a Roth conversion or certain conversions in order to access that money early and penalty free. So she has to put together a FIRE plan that lays out how she's going to accumulate this money, but then also how she's going to draw down this money. So that's the homework that I have before we close out her question. I hope that we've given her food for thought. That's what we really want to do with this podcast. We want people to think more about their overall FIRE plan, about their investment plan, how they're managing their money, and so that they can make better decisions.
Yeah, that's right. So Michelle, you have your homework to do. For those of you listening, if you're in the same situation, consider this your homework assignment too. And if you guys have questions for our podcast, questions that you want us to answer, make sure you go to ourrichjourney.com/podcast to send us a question so we can answer it on this podcast. And then until tomorrow, we will see you and enjoy your day. Remember that we are not financial advisors and the views expressed by us are solely for entertainment purposes. You must make responsible decisions, and that means making decisions based on the thorough independent research that you conduct. Thanks for listening.